What's up, beautiful people? Welcome to another episode of the podcast. Today we have Chelsey Joe Huntsman, who is a mentor, a writer, an artist. She works with women and couples on relationship, love, sex, intimacy. And we talked about all the juicy stuff here today. We talked about fucking God. We talked about healing father and mother wounds to find divine union. And she gives us, all the really juicy details. It was a beautiful, free flowing conversation, lots of vulnerability and openness. And I can't wait for you to dive in. So enjoy. What's up, my love? Thanks for being here.
I'm so excited, babe. Thank you
We
for
did
having
it.
me. We did it.
Yeah, we're both the field is ripe today for this conversation. We had some we tried once and the tech wasn't there, and then I had to reschedule, and then you had to reschedule, and then finally the stars just aligned, and today is the day.
Yeah, I feel like the field is always calibrating for these very potent conversations and meeting of hearts and wombs of what wants to be shared. And I'm sure that we've both been through some kind of journey to get right here so that we could speak to what wants to be shared today. So I'm excited.
Yes, yes, I'm excited too, my love. I loved your prayer. I always pray with guests either silently or out loud if they let me. Most of our guests let me pray out loud and add some beautiful things, and your intention was so beautiful that let this conversation be a prayer for what true love is. Did I get that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that you pray before every episode. I feel like prayer is such a transmission, and I feel like our
Mm.
love is such a transmission, and it's an anchor point, for I'm curious actually in your relationship for Oren and I, it's an anchor point for our relationship. We pray with each other, we pray into each other, we pray into our offerings, we pray into our love, we pray for the world. It's a constant pulse for us, and it's actually a new thing. I've never really been in deep prayer in
Mm-hmm.
relationship until being with him. So I'm
Mm.
curious.
Yeah, I mean, I would say prayer is such a central part of my life. And I think the form of prayer, like where on the Venn diagram, Patrick and I overlap because he is, he's a spiritual man, and he's he's in the work after six
Yeah.
years of being with me.
Yeah.
But where that Venn diagram crosses over for us is gratitude. And so
Mm.
we'll hike and we'll do future gratitude, and we'll whether when I used to drink coffee, now I'm pregnant, I'm not doing caffeine, but morning drinks, we'll just and
Hmm.
sometimes we'll stand up and make it fun, like welcome to the main stage, give each other a full introduction. And then
Yes.
that's our form of prayer, is both gratitude in the present for what is, and then also getting really excited, as if it's already happening, gratitude. And we do that on birthdays too, which is his invitation. He always remembers, what are we going to be celebrating on this day in 12 months time?
Oof. I love that.
Yeah, so it's beautiful. It is to co-create not only with the universe, but with your partner. And I mean, you mentioned Oren, and your prayer for this podcast I love so much around true love. What does true love mean to you? What is that in your life in this
Mm.
moment?
To me, true love feels like this ever evolving, expanding experience that is. And so for me and for us, it's like this. Hmm, yeah, it feels like we're experiencing God through each other and through ourselves, and in that, truly the infinite, the divine. And so there's this essence with love that feels like it's always inviting us. It's always inviting us into presence, into prayer, into being, into knowing, into truth. And yeah, to me, true love, I think true love is is always taking new form and shape, and so it's always evolving us in that way too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I love that. And for anyone listening, I think most of our listeners, for sure are spiritual,
Yeah.
spiritually inclined. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't listen to this show. But many of them, some may have, but some may have not experienced that spiritual union mediated through partnership. They may have experienced it in
Mm-hmm.
prayer and spiritual practice, but like when they hear you talk about, wow, like this experience of mediating that love through two bodies,
Mm.
what was your journey like? Because for the people listening, like, whoa, that sounds so beautiful, but I feel so far away from experiencing that with another human. Like, what would you say to them? What has your journey been like to experiencing that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love this because I feel like before the relationship that I'm in now, I never would have even been able to express the words that I'm saying. And so I feel like sometimes relationships can really bring forward a new expression, prayer, and truth through us. And before I met Oren, I'd been in many different relationships and dynamics, but I was always coming to them from still more of a wounded place and this space of needing to have father wounds, merging in the field and all these different elements. And so the Cliff Notes version of this story is that in my last breakup, I was actually engaged. We'd been together for 5 years, and I was so certain that this person was my soulmate. And he was like the best man in the world, just such a really beautiful being and incredible. We had such incredible love together. And when that relationship ended, and I looked at myself and I was like, how could I still find myself in this position of trauma and wounding and looping and karmic patterns playing out with the best man in the world, essentially? Okay, there's definitely something happening internally here. And so I went on this almost like internal pilgrimage of, all right, this is me. This is my relationship with men. This is my relationship with my father. This is my relationship with God, essentially. I'm really angry at God. I'm really mad at what is happening. And I feel like I went on a very deep dive into all of the masculine wounding that I had. And I tell people that I started to, in my own way and in my self pleasure practice, because I was celibate during this time, I started to make love to God, essentially. I wasn't like fantasizing or even manifesting. I was just like inviting this very deep, intimate presence of show me what this truly is through my
Mm,
body, through my heart, through my womb. I want to know you because
mm,
I don't feel like I've ever actually known you. And,
mm-hmm,
I come from like Mormon background, religion, all these places where God was tainted in my eyes. And so for many months, just deeply making love to God in my practice and my prayer and ritual. And I feel like when I met Oren, there was this, it was like oh, I know you. I feel
mm-hmm,
you and I can fully receive you because this man is so deeply embodied in the presence of God that when we made love for the first time, I was like, oh, I've been preparing for you.
mm,
Wow. And for the first time in my life, I'm actually making love. And so I never, even in the past, used those words. I
mm-hmm,
never said, "Oh, I'm making love with my partner." It was always, "I'm fucking, we're having sex." It was
mm-hmm,
very erotic and beautiful, but I never once said, "I'm making love." And I also, in you know, the at that point, 32 years of my life, had never even cried during sex with a partner until
mm,
this man. And so it is to me, it's feels like the direct channel to the divine. To actually, when we're
yeah,
working with sex in that way, it's a technology. And when it's rooted through love and connected to God, there is this direct transmission of God's love through you. And
mm-hmm.
it's something I've never experienced before. And it's not even something I think I was seeking or looking for. It was just very intuitive the way that it happened and moved through.
Yes. Yeah, there are two threads that I want to pull on there. The first is like, this idea of making love to God. And that's been a really big part of my practice as well. And I think that's a really great tidbit for anyone listening who's like, okay, I have a connection to the divine. I'd like to strengthen that connection first and foremost. And also, I'd like to be, as you were saying, prepared to experience the divine mediated through another body, to make love and have sex be a spiritual experience. It's like, that's such a great place to start. I did a reel, it actually got deleted by Instagram this week, even though I posted it last month, but alas, the patriarchal Instagram overlords don't like too much when we talk about God's cock. I get it. So yeah, and the reel was all about like, what if it's not his cock that you're craving, like the fuck boy that ghosted you, or your ex, or like that, whatever that cock is that you might be craving, that if you're not having it, if it's that like longing for this person or this being or this sex that you had and now you don't have, I'm like, what if it's God's cock that actually
Oh,
he's just your
oh,
favored face of God, and you projected that onto him and he couldn't live up to that, and let's just like tear the mask off and fuck God instead. So I love that
babe,
you
babe, pause on the deliciousness of that. Thank you for taking something that I love and making it even more delicious.
It's like, everybody listening, stop making love to God in your own way. And
Yeah.
it could look so different. Like, I've had experiences where I'm like in a temple of gods, and
Mm-hmm.
they're all headless. They just have light shining out of their head, but they have like masculine bodies. And I'm like having an orgy with like 10 of God. I'm like, she could get real kinky with God, y'all. So like, don't hesitate.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. That's, I think, the most important piece to it is that it's like you're learning. Ultimately, what it feels like to me is it's almost like it's coming through and purifying all the shame and all the judgment and all the ideas and all
Mm.
the ego and all the expectation of what sex, making love, cock, all of these essences, what we've experienced. It's like, let that essence come through and fully purify your heart and your womb into this is what love and sex is actually here to bring you into. It is like the most
Yes.
powerful alchemy and force on the planet when it comes
Mm-hmm.
through that love, right? When it moves through the heart. And so I love
Yes.
I love that. It's like and because of that, it's going to be so unique to your body and what your desires and ultimately what God and the divine want to experience through you as well. And I think that's the most
Yes.
beautiful piece is like, God is also receiving and feeling, and it's like this simultaneous sacred
Attunement.
reciprocity that's happening. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
attunement as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, you don't need to be anything for the divine. The divine doesn't need you to like be someone or like wear some mask, or like, you will be fully worshipped exactly as you are, with all the mistakes that you've made, with your body exactly as it is in this moment. Whether you just woke up and you have bad breath, like, the divine will fucking ravish you. And I think that's such a
Mm.
beautiful place to be as a woman, to, yeah, to not need that. I had this funny, like, the way where that reel came from is like this. I had an ex-lover like intrude on a pleasure practice and like came in psychically into the space, and all of my fingers turned, because they were tongues, and I was exploring my own body with like my fingers were like tongues, and I was having a great time, and this ex-lover just comes in my space, and I was like, hell no. And I just, my fingers turned to swords, and I just like cut his head off in this vision. And the light, that's where the light image came from. The light came out, and I started fucking God instead. I was like, you I will have, but you get out of here. So
Yes.
anyway, I digress. You were talking about father wounds, and I just want to like tug on that, because I know
Mm.
that's a big part of the work that you do in supporting women to, yeah, prepare for divine partnership, to be ready within divine partnership, and to have this type of sacred union that you're talking
Hmm.
about. So I would love for you to just like speak to that a little bit more.
Yeah, I feel like one of the ultimate wounds that exists in the collective, there's the mother wound, there's the father wound, and ultimately it's like many of us have both on in some level or capacity. It doesn't matter how incredible our parents even were. For me, there was definitely, it wasn't just the father wound, but it was like every male figure in my life. My father was absent, my grandfather drank himself to death, and my
Mm.
uncle killed himself, and my stepfather sexually abused me. It was like everywhere I turned to look to and feel, oh, is this man going to be the one that can hold the example or the pillar of what a man should be in my life? I was just hit in every direction with men are here to hurt me. Men are
Mm.
always going to cause pain and trauma. Men are always going to be the reason why the women in my life are crying and hurt. And it was so much. Now looking back, I can see the deep lineage work that this is, right? The ancestral work that's happening. And so that was also what happened when I was going through that last breakup where I was like, how could this relationship have ended? And I remember just looking around and I had to get really honest with myself, and I was like, I fucking hate men. In my
Mm.
core, I am so angry at men for what they have done to me, for what they've done to my mother and my grandmother and my family. And not even just that, but I've been bonding with other women and women in my family through hate for men. So
Mm.
there's this like connection point of how do we bond and relate and stay, in this cycle together. I want to feel connected to you through this feeling of we can't trust them. They're always
Mm-hmm.
going to hurt us.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, there was a really deep just witnessing of the pattern that had been taking place all throughout the family line, and really, having that moment where no, this really stops right here. And for me, because the father wounding is something that there was a deep abandonment and just not even knowing my father really, like to this day we don't really have a relationship, and just not ever feeling that protector, provider, safety element, structure in
Yeah.
my life. It's played out in so many different dynamics. It's something that Oren and I are even still, we still navigate together sometimes, where I'm like, whoa, there's another like piece and layer here. And so for me, the healing, because it couldn't happen with my actual father, actually needed to come through again, the healing with God. Because I feel like at the
Mm.
core, that relational wound is, again, it's like abandonment by God, abandonment by the provider. If any time in our life we've ever felt like we have been abandoned and not protected, especially when there's been sexual trauma or trauma at all in the system, there's this sensation of I'm not actually being held here. I can't trust life. I can't
Mm-hmm.
trust men. I can't trust love at the core. I can't trust myself to be in love and be in my heart. And so, yeah,
Mm.
it's been this, honestly, one of the most beautiful and also catalyzing journeys of my life. And I think it's all, again, it's always unfolding. There's layers. It's like the deeper we go into love, the more we start to peel back what exists in the soma and in the tissues and in the system, and it's whoa, okay, there's more there. And I think that the more we can meet up with those spaces and wounds and traumas that took place with this essence of compassion and curiosity and love, and also really seeing it as the gift that our families have passed down to us because they trusted us with it, essentially, right? I look at it as, at this
Yeah.
point in my life, I look at it as an honor to be able to heal and simultaneously love in the way that I am and that I do. And I watch how it's shifting. I see my mother in real time coming more into her heart, and I see I'm watching as the way that this relationship and the love, what's happening is it's moving itself back through the line, and I know that it will move itself forward when we choose to have a family as well. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. I so believe that. They say that when you heal, it heals seven generations back and seven generations forward. And yeah, that has definitely been my experience. It's so beautiful to feel the ripple effects. And so we're talking kind of about father wounds and like the masculine face of God. Did you have to work with mother wounds and like the feminine face of the goddess? Was that more you embodying the goddess, meeting the god? Like, how is that for
Mm,
you? There's obviously no right way, but I'm
I
just curious
feel
how that was for
like
you.
actually, because so much of my journey up until recently was healing the mother wound, I'd almost forgotten the father wound. And so there was this huge,
Mm-hmm.
huge, so much of my
Right.
life was this relationship with my mother and healing the relationship with my mother, because ultimately I was really angry at her for placing me in certain situations with men, or it felt like there was a responsibility there. And so, yeah, the mother wound
Yes.
was deep. And I don't feel like it's like those two have to go together. We can't heal the mother wound without the father wound. We can't heal
Yeah.
the father wound without the mother wound. We can't heal the masculine without the feminine, and vice versa. And so when we're only focused on one, it can kind of
Mm-hmm.
become this like lopsided journey where it's like, oh, I'm very much over here. And that was my experience. But I definitely went all the way into mother wound, goddess work, all the way. And I'm so deeply grateful for that, because I feel like I needed to know myself in that space, and also to see there's this, I think, something that can happen sometimes with that work specifically, especially with the mother wound and the goddess piece, is, and this is edgy for me to say, but I feel I can speak it with you, is there's this, because if we don't feel empowered through our mothers, or if we see and we're coming in and we're like, okay, I'm going to be this empowered woman, I'm going to be more than my mother, or I'm going to show to the world that I am worthy, we almost overpower the men around us. So the goddess work can become like distorted in a sense where it's like, I am the highest power, like
Mm-hmm.
bow down to me. You know, that's how I felt in my system, where I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'll just do all these like pujas and temples and worshiping the women around me and all of the sisters. And we're always like tending to each other and tending to the temple and doing all this yoni work. And all the time we were in ceremony and ritual together. And I just remember, this was in the last relationship that ended, I remember looking around and being like, wait, where are the men? Why are we not offering these ceremonies and these rituals also
Mm-hmm.
to the men? So yeah, that was a moment for me where I was like in deep devotion to the goddess, but to the point where it had taken me a little bit into a distortion of like, I was in my ego entirely too much, because I was trying to
Mm-hmm.
prove
Mm-hmm.
I'm worthy. I'm worthy of my mother's love. I'm worthy of my father's love. I'm good enough, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And so I think that there's a there's a balancing that happens.
Yeah, it's like it doesn't matter the spiritual
Yeah.
practice, it's all about the come from. And what I'm hearing is like if that come from is distorted, then any spiritual practice wraps around that distortion and
Yeah.
will come out just with distortions in the field. And I wanted to double click, you were talking about how you'd spent working so much time working on the mother wound because that
Mhm.
felt most prevalent for you. And I think I find that a lot. I was literally just on a call with a client before we jumped on here, and I was talking about this, and I've seen this in myself as well. Is like you spend a lot of time working with the parent that feels most obviously dysfunctional or really had the most obvious impact or hurt on you, and then sometimes it's like very shocking or surprising that ultimately you have to kind of stumble upon sometimes even the parent that
Right.
feels like the good parent that was nicer or easier. But then you start to realize, like, oh, wait, but
Right.
you didn't protect me. You didn't keep me safe from the parent that was more difficult, or in some people, some
Right.
instances, the abuser. So, and that can be so hard to look at because people are like, well, I had one, quote unquote, good parent. I had one safe haven, but they didn't keep me safe. And, sometimes that's because they're scared of the abuser as well. Other times it's because you might not be in the same home as the abuser and the court orders that you have to go to that home. And so it's just such an interesting
Mhm.
quagmire of healing when we get into this, like healing our lineage, working with mother, working with father. And I think it's an important point you bring up that like sometimes we have so much focus
Mhm.
on one of the parents because
Yep.
it's like very obvious that it needs healing. And then it isn't until you loop back around and do the work with the other parent, even the absent. Yeah, if it's an absent parent, sometimes we think, oh, I don't have to work with that. Like they weren't there. And it's like, no, like there's so much. Yeah, it has to be really done on all sides.
Yeah.
It's such an
Yeah.
integrated system if
Yeah.
we want an integrated
Yeah.
system.
I feel like for me, it was this.
Mm-hmm.
I remember being very young and being like, I don't care that he's not here. And I really believed that.
Mm.
Like I was so little, and people would ask me, and I'd be like, I
Yeah.
don't care. I'm so glad he's not here. And I wrote him a letter once when I finally,
Mm.
got a moment to connect with him when I was 18. I was like, I'm glad you weren't around. Like, just really very bratty teenager. Like, I did fine without you. And
Yeah.
one night,
Yeah.
yeah,
Of course.
one night
Understandable.
it was during this like celibacy, making love to God journey. I got rejected by this guy that I had a crush on. He went into,
Mm.
yeah,
Ooh, rejection's the worst.
so
Why does
bad.
it hurt
I didn't
so
even really
bad?
like him, but
Yeah.
I had a crush, and it was kind of like my first crush after being in relationship for a long time. And I watched him go into a room. He took another woman into his room, and I was just like, oh, we weren't even dating, but internally it felt
Mm.
so intense to my system and
Mm.
heartbreaking. And I went home and I laid in bed, and I was just like, oh, what is this? This is so intense. And I remembered that I took just a little bit of mushrooms, and I was like, there is something that
Mm.
really wants to move here. And I could feel this, like I went
Mm.
all the way back into my mother's womb when I was just like coming in, and I could just feel this deep, deep pain as a child, feeling rejected by my father. Like there was a memory
Yes.
viscerally, and I was like, whoa. And I just cried and viscerally really allowed myself for the first time, I think, to move through that entire process. But it was one of those moments where I went from I don't care to, oh, no, 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 no. This has been deeply affecting me my entire life.
Yes. Oh my God. Wow. Powerful. So much courage to like spontaneously and ceremonially go back into that wound. Because that's the thing, like the I don't care, that's a survival strategy. But it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
what hurt us and who did we become in the face of that pain? Like, how did we have to orient around the hurt? Like, so for you, being in your mother's womb, already feeling potentially that rejection, coming out into the world and feeling people asking you, like, oh, where's your dad? And you're like, well,
Mm-hmm.
you're orienting around that hurt and that rejection that you re experience by saying, I don't care. And it's like, it's pretty adaptive. It's kind of clever to do that. But, like all survival strategies, you get to your relationship and it's broken down and you're like, hang on a minute, something's in the way. And very often it's like that I don't care or whatever survival strategy that we had to use to survive the
Yeah.
pain is now obstructing the love. It's like nothing gets in, but nothing gets out. And it's such woo, deep work that you're speaking to. Such deep work. And you speak to like on this tip of like moving through these deep healings and healing the lineage mother and father wounds. Like I know this term is thrown around a lot, but I would love to hear from you, like
Mm.
divine union and the blueprint for
Mm.
that. Like, what is
Babe,
that?
this is something that I feel is so, it is a term that's thrown around a lot, and I do want to speak to that. And I think that people don't fully even understand what that can mean or does mean or is to the planet, and how it actually is. It's the experience that we're having of it and what's happening. And I feel, I witness and I see it's reawakening itself on the planet right now, because I feel like it is the thing that is actually going to move us forward in a way. When I was just talking to Oren about this last night, we were talking about how there's been this, it's like ancient future. It's what we have always known and what we are actually built for in our system, in our bodies, in our heart. It's the merging of the masculine and the feminine together when we actually truly see one another and work within this template that is where we're supposed to be and how we feel truly in that love together. Again, this is technology that is greater than anything that has ever existed. Like this force field of love that carries us forward and is the vision for the planet. It's why we're designed. You can feel it in your bones. It's why we're designed to love. We're designed to find that person. We're always kind of like, you can feel that aching and longing in your bones, in your entire soul. You can feel, I'm meant to love in this way, because we are, when we merge with another being and we take that forward, it's so healing for the planet. And I see this, it excites me because I'm watching it happen in so many ways right now, where a lot of people are breaking up, and there's also a lot of couples that are coming deeper into union or coming into that partnership that they're meant to be in, because that love is actually healing the planet. It's healing the lineage, it's healing the planet. And also, I feel divine union is something that, whether you're in relationship or not, you can experience through being in relationship with God and in communion with the divine and in communion with life, because you start to actually look at union. It's completely dissolving the separation from all things and coming into this oneness, right? And so you start to look at and see, and here's the thing about divine union, it's been quite
Yeah.
intense and beautiful, is when you come into that level and frequency of love, it will purge up into the space all of those all the pieces of separation, all of the wounds, all of the traumas, right? And so it's like, oh yay, divine union! I'm so excited to be in divine union.
Oh,
I'm
yes,
like,
honey.
yo, this is a full on. It is. It's a path that will consistently bring you all the way in, and you have to choose every single day. Do I want to be in love? Do I want to be devoted to this mission? So yeah, I feel
Yes,
like
yes,
there's a reawakening and a
yes.
retemplatizing of what love and union is on the planet right now. And the exciting piece about this is that we are at a time right now where we have never been given this level of freedom, liberation, and ultimately the choice of who we love as women. I would say that even our own mothers, grandmothers, just the family line
Mm-hmm.
before us couldn't fully, from their hearts, just choose out of, I
Oh,
want to
hell yeah.
be with this person just because I truly love them and I feel we're doing this together. And so we're at this time, this precipice in our collective evolution where as women, we can choose who we love while simultaneously also meeting up with, wow, we can also choose how we serve and how we give, and being in that entrepreneur space of, do I want to devote to a mission and a man and a partner, right? And so we're just living at this leading edge right now of what I feel divine union is in this now moment. This ancient future technology is like, it is time. It's time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear that. I think, it's such a beautiful point.
Yeah.
Like, never have we, and it's not for every woman
Yeah.
on this planet today, but for women in the United States, who have some listeners in Australia, like women in the Western world, like, yeah, we've never had this freedom, exactly as you said, even our mothers and grandmothers. And I had to do, and I don't know about you, I still had to do a
Yeah.
lot of work to actually excavate that from my system. Yeah, I had to do a lot of work to excavate that from my system, even though, okay, the reality has changed. I have choice. Yeah, it wasn't
Yeah.
until my early 20s, similar, I had a breakup and was like, what's going on with me? And I had to really look at, I was like super hyper independent. And I was like, I'm so independent. I don't need anyone. But then underneath that was this like helpless little girl who really believed that she had ingested that beauty was her only card to play, and that she wouldn't really be able to like make it on her own or make success for herself or take care of herself. So
Oof.
that to marry a man would be her only way to secure her safety. And I didn't even know. I really like didn't know. Underneath, I like was buried so deep, that helplessness. On top, I was like, I'm a fucking badass, independent. I don't need anybody. But there was this like, yeah, this little girl inside of me that felt super helpless, and I had to do a lot of work around that to get to a place where I truly, actually believed the choice that's here, where I could actually choose
Oh
the
yeah.
choice that's now available. And I think that work is still being done, even though we have the
Oh yeah,
choice. Yeah, I don't know if
it's
that was
something
if
that I
you had any of
feel.
that
This is
lingering in
what
your
I say
system.
when it's like everything, especially when you're coming into and you're claiming and you're devoting to union, you are, and I think this is not talked about enough, is that when we're choosing that, it's almost like we're also saying yes to catalyzing and moving through the collective wounds through our own love first, because we've said yes. And so we're the ones that are on that edge, and we're the ones that are processing collective what we're talking about here. And there is such a gift in that, and also such a responsibility to be willing to see and to discern what is actually happening. Because when two people come together, right, it's like there's so much there, and there's so much potential. And yes, exactly.
Whew. Two universes
Yes.
colliding.
Yeah, like okay.
And two big bags of
And
trauma
then again, it
trash.
comes
Like
down to the truth, like what's actually true here, right? And so I love that you share this, and it's
Mhm.
something that Oren and I, when we move through things, which we we don't, I wouldn't say that we fight or have a lot of conflict, but when we move through things, it's like, wow, we can feel this is for us, but also this is for us, this is for the collective, this is for our family, this is for our lineage all the way through. So it's not just, oh, you and I have a problem, we're having a fight. I'm like, oh no,
Community.
I can feel the tendrils, the conditioning, the programming, the matrix, the spell, the illusion, all of the things that are existing through the field. It's like, whoa, this is deep right now, what is happening.
Yes. There's what you're arguing about, and then there's the deeper thing that's happening. And like that has been so much of the work that Patrick and I have had to work on, because so many of our arguments would end up being the
Mm,
same argument, which is me wanting him to see what's deeper. And I'm like, I have the sight. So that's tricky when you're with someone who has a gift and you're like, but there's something deeper and I need you to see it. But he's really great.
mm-hmm.
He's really, over the years, he really goes there with me now. And now what's beautiful about that is now I don't have to be so obsessively tracking him. It's like, I know he's got him. I'm softening into seeing my own wounding, because
Exactly.
it's literally when you argue, it's like, oh, here's your little boy, here's my little girl, here's all our old hurt and how we've oriented around that. And it ain't unique. So that's why it's healing for us, our families, the collective, our communities, because our pain, our struggle, our challenge in many ways is unique, the
Yep.
combination, but in many ways, at its essence, is very simple and so universal. Our needs are pretty universal when they don't get met, and then the unique way that we orient around that hurt. So it's like these arguments about the quote unquote things that don't really matter, they only come forward, especially if you're in like a
Mm-hmm.
dynamic, that's a little more easy. I'm hearing that with you.
Yeah.
And you, like Oren, like don't fight too much. Patrick and I, we go through seasons and cycles where we'll
Yeah.
like not
Yeah.
fight for 6 months, and
Totally.
then we'll
Yeah.
have 2 months
Feels,
where we
yeah.
fight like 3 times or something. I don't know if you have
There's a
that, but
season.
we'll go through a little season where we're like, okay, we're fighting now. Like we're in it. And there's a little
Yes.
season here, and it's always like an initiation. It's always for a reason. There's an intelligence to it. Something's trying to move, something's trying to heal. It's not because we're just fighting now. It's like there's a deeper game being played. And I think that's what you're speaking to. And I think that's such a key as a couple to be like, okay, this is not about the fucking whatever ridiculousness that we're arguing about. There's a deeper game being played. And very often with couples, I see they play their tape, and it's the dynamic
Mm-hmm.
playing out through the context. And it's like you got to heal that deeper dynamic, and that deeper dynamic is healing your lineage, because that's the dynamic you had with your mom, or you saw your mom had with her partner or your dad, or there's a deeper dynamic. And then you move through that, and it's for your community because they see the dynamic shift, and then there's a new blueprint in the field so people can operate to that. So it's like when people hear that, like, oh, it's healing, and they
Yeah.
might think, well, like,
Yeah.
really, is it how? It's
Yeah,
like, no,
I
actually,
really
it
love this
actually
is
is.
one of my favorite conversations ever because
Mm-hmm.
it feels like it's something that again it comes with a responsibility, you know. We we were just talking about this recently, Oren and I were sharing how a lot of times when people come into a relationship, they can be very self-serving, right? It's like I'm here to get my needs met. Like I want to be loved. I love you. Fuck me, I fuck you. We do the thing.
Yeah.
And when a relationship is only self-serving, it will self-destruct. Like it will eventually find its demise and decay and death. But when a relationship has a greater mission and purpose, and that can sometimes be
Yes.
family. Sometimes it's we're here to have a family together, we're here to build a home together, we're here to be a living prayer.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And
A
it's got to be
business.
bigger than just
Yeah,
our
whatever.
own personal
Something bigger.
needs. And when that happens, the relationship can actually continue to expand and evolve
Mm-hmm.
together, right? And so this is again coming back to the union piece where it's like we're not just here to self-serve our individual needs and desires. We're actually here when we're in devotion to union, to the collective, to the field. And so that's why we're also processing things for the collective through our love. And there's a deep devotion to that and a willingness to meet that with like, so much love. So I bow to you both for doing that work as well. Really, truly. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, yeah,
We in it.
definitely in the work. That's for sure. We doing the work. Yeah. But I think that like but I really am like it's so rewarding. And I think what we've gotten better at as a couple over the years is making it easier
Mm-hmm.
for the other person to find us to meet our needs. So, you know, we could both Patrick and I have this hyper independence. We don't need anyone,
Yeah.
which really comes from feeling like no one was coming in our own ways when we were little and feeling like, you know, we had to be super independent. And so for us to kind of learn how to find each other in that, and also really like, I love the word you're using, responsibility, to be like, okay, I need something right
Yeah.
now. I'm in it right now. How do I make it
Yep.
easy for my partner to get to me? Like that's actually my job. If I want
Mm.
help, I have to make it easy for them to get to me, which was hard for me. I mean, really, I think we're only
Mm.
hitting our stride with that this year, and this is our 7th year of relationship. I think we're just starting to hit that stride of like, oh, things move more quickly because we're
Mm.
making it, taking the
Mm.
responsibility of making it easy for you to get to me,
That's
you know, like,
beautiful. Yeah.
which ain't
That's
easy.
something that I really resonate
Mm-hmm.
with. It's been one of the things that Oren and I have navigated too is
Yeah.
my hyper independence. It's one of like the main things that has consistently, you know, we're doing so good with it now, but it was a thing for a long time in our relationship. We've named that archetype sovereign Sally. And she just don't
Yes.
she doesn't need anything.
I love it. She just don't need nobody. She don't need nothing. You know
Yeah.
what? Do you and Oren want a family one day? Is that something you guys? Yeah, well, girl, when you get pregnant, honey, and it's different for everybody, but I just turned into like I was like, oh my God, I need so much help, which was so I'd done a lot of work on it. So it was easier. I was like, if I hadn't worked on it, I would be fighting this. This would be excruciating. But I was just like, wow, I have no testosterone in my
Oh.
body, is how it felt. I had no
Yeah.
armoring. I had no fight in me. And I usually have like a good amount of fight, you know? And I'm like, no fight. I'm like, Patrick was like, you are so easy to help, because he was like, I was just crying all the time first trimester. I was like, I, I didn't eat soon enough, and now I feel nauseous, and I can't make food, but I don't know what I want. And then he's like, I'll make you food, baby. He's like, and he makes me something beautiful, and I'm like, ugh, I'm sorry, I can't eat that. It has to be something else. And he's like, that's okay. He's like, you're so cute. You're just so sick and sad. And like, and it was like such a fall from like tough angel, badass CEO, fucking like Muay Thai fighting, shaved head. I had a shaved head when he met me, to like this, like, I need help to put my socks on. And he's just like, oh my God,
Oh,
bless you. So you might have a totally different experience, and I'm sure you
are
will,
you
but
kidding? I love
that was
hearing that.
really great for me. It was
I feel like
humbling.
that would be probably one of the best gifts in the world to feel that way, to feel like I can't even try to fight or like do this myself right now. I love the humbleness, and also I can feel the texture of what you're saying, and I think that's so beautiful to be in that state of full vulnerability and trust with him, where it's like, okay, full take care of me, you know. It's natural, it's beautiful to hear that.
Yeah. And I do think I know Oren, so I know he's got like that nurturing in him and that like protector. So I'm like, you're gonna be great. But I do think a lot of women when they get pregnant, like that comes up for them, especially if they're hyper independent, because all of a
Yeah.
sudden it's like if you think from an evolutionary biology perspective, like you're vulnerable. You know, and some women back in the day would have been like warriors and stuff and like probably fighting in battles sometimes. Like depends on the woman and the area and the time. But when you're pregnant, even if you're a badass, even if you go to war, nah, you're the most vulnerable person other than the elderly and the children in the pack. Like you just are vulnerable. You just don't have the same energy. Even if you have a really super easy breezy pregnancy, it's not the same as not being pregnant. You're not pregnant, you know? So I think it's such a beautiful thing. And I think a lot of women do bump up against that if you haven't been in the discussion and like you're
Mm,
talking about like healing the deeper dynamics from man to woman versus just like between us of like, will you take care of me, will you protect me, and I think, you know, that goes both ways. But yeah, I think it can bring up so much. And what I am grateful for is that we could lean into that because we'd already, you know, gone through all the hell
yeah,
realms, and there's plenty more. We still
just
walk
to
them
keep it
through them
alive.
occasionally just to, you know, have a little reminder.
Do
But
you?
don't
Yeah,
forget,
I feel like, and I'm so
heaven
curious
is a
about
frequency, but so
you
is
two
hell.
and how this moves for you. But we've really landed in this belief that when those things happen because the relationship, there's unexpressed potential or love or creation. Essentially, it's almost like there's a stagnancy in the field. And what happens, right? Chaos. We need the chaos, we need like the destruction to come into creation, into another state of deeper love. And it's like it almost creates this pathway for more love to open up through us. I feel like you guys have been through that so many times now. Right, exactly.
Yes, if you engage with it consciously. Yes, 100%. It's
Yeah.
like Johan always says, everyone listening knows Rachel, my best friend, and they've been together
Yeah.
11 years. So sometimes we look to them
They're
and we're
like,
like,
they're
yeah,
like,
what the fuck is going on? And they're like, you guys are doing great. Honestly, we're like, really? I don't. Last year we were like, this is what great looks like. And they're like, honestly, because most couples that I know that are in really deep
right, like a death.
spiritual union
Deep.
eventually
Yep.
go through some kind of like spiritual divorce, and you have to like go through the you go through the breakdown, and you're like, holy shit, and you got to stand in the fire. We went through that last year, and I think they went through that right around the year 6 or 7 mark. And so
Yeah.
yeah, it was just interesting to look to them and be like, are we okay? Like you're actually doing great. But he says,
Mm,
alas, tangent, Johan says
yeah.
every contraction leads to an expansion. And I think that it's exactly what you're speaking to. It's like when you work with it consciously and you're willing to play the deeper game and say like, what's really going on here for me and for you? Can we both take responsibility? Then yeah, fucking oath. Because then you can like stop playing that tape. You're like, okay, that tape is transmuted. Like versus, you know, everyone
Mm-hmm.
listening, if you're in a relationship or have been in a relationship, you know
Yeah.
that you have your
It's like,
tapes. You just
no.
hit play,
No.
and we're gonna fight about the same
Yeah,
old shit.
exactly. Yeah, it's a portal,
Burn
not
the
a
tape.
problem. And I really appreciate that. It's interesting that
Mm-hmm.
mm,
Woo!
yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I love that. It's a
It's
portal, not a
it's a gift.
problem.
Yes, we will.
Yes. Yes.
It's
Trademark that. We need some Oren,
yes.
some merch up in here for you guys. Your Divine Union merch. It's like
We'll get those
it's a
sweatshirts
portal,
out
not a
soon,
problem.
guys.
You
Yeah.
know.
So good.
Yeah. Stay tuned, y'all. Oh, well, my love, I mean, I feel like we could just go on forever. Maybe I'll just have to have you back on. I feel like I say that with most of my guests because I'm like, we need more. And I my production team's like, let's like try to do
Yeah.
30 minutes or shorter bites. And I'm like, okay, we're going to do that. And I just can't because you're too good. There's too much juice here. So
Mm.
everyone listening, where can they find you and connect with your work if they're just like needing more?
So I roll deep and hard and give so much love on Instagram at Chelsey Joe Huntsman. There's so much to go into there, a lot of really beautiful free content, and then my website is the same.
Thank you so much, my love. Just so appreciate you being here and sharing your love, your heart, and your wisdom. And excited for all the people listening to run on over to Instagram and get to know more of you and your work.